And hi, everyone. We're just going to wait a couple seconds as we start trickling in. All right, so we would like to welcome you to our workshop entitled How to Develop Your Legal Brand Part 2. And we're going to talk today about strategic networking for growth and success. Today's panel is sponsored by the ABA Young Lawyers Division, and we want to give a special shout out to Ms. Cornisha Padilla over the Women of Color Task Force. My name is Charlyn Stanberry, and I am ecstatic to be your moderator today. Today, you are in for an inspiring and educational presentation. Today's program is meant for women of color lawyers seeking to develop or improve their success in the legal field through strategic networking. So, this is not a skill that is taught in law school or any academic course that you could pick up. Developing your networking skills can provide lawyers, and more specifically, women of color lawyers, with a wider range of career and leadership opportunities. We are so grateful to have an incredible speaker with us today, who's going to provide guidance for us on her actual strategies that she would suggest for strategic networking. So just want to introduce our esteemed speaker. Krystal Studavent Ramsey leads Blank Rome's diversity and inclusion function and strategy firm-wide across over 1,000 professionals and 14 offices, including 13 in the US and 1 in Shanghai. She works to collaboratively foster an equitable work environment and inclusive culture where all of Blank Rome's workforce experiences belonging, has the opportunity to thrive. So let me tell you a little bit about Krystal. Krystal has 12 years of interdisciplinary experience in the legal industry. Her focus has been on DEI strategy and operations, talent leadership development and management, marketing, and business development. Previously, she served as a legal workforce consultant for Axiom, which is the world's largest alternative legal services provider. She's a former practicing corporate attorney and general counsel, SVP of Business Affairs of Music World Entertainment. And just if you're wondering what Music World Entertainment is, it's the entertainment management company and record label home to Beyonce and BET's Sunday Best Artists. She's also been director of strategy and operations for the national nonprofit entitled Diverse Attorney Pipeline Program. There, she provided coaching and career placement for first-year women of color law students. She's also served as the executive director of Houston-based nonprofit, the Downtown Group. That was formed in 1997 to develop, advance, and uplift Black women attorneys throughout Greater Houston. And if that's not all that Krystal's been a part of, she's been recognized as a top 15 diversity and inclusion champion by Diversity Global magazine. She's been recognized as a woman who means business in the outstanding business leader in law category by the Houston Business Journal. And also, she was named an outstanding lawyer in a non-traditional setting by the National Bar Association's Women Lawyers Division. She's a frequent speaker on everything that we mentioned, from branding to DEI to strategic development. And we're so ecstatic to have Krystal here with us today. So Krystal, I'm going to give it to you to take it away for today's panel and give us the great tips that you want us to follow.
Well, no, just tell me more. I'm just kidding. Thank you so much, Char, for that warm introduction. I want to thank you, and I want to thank Kernesha and the ABA Young Lawyers Division, and of course, the Women of Color Task Force for having me here to speak. I am always excited to talk about networking, and I'm feeling pumped because it is Women's History Month and the day after International Women's Day. And so I'm excited to be here with all of you. I'm feeling refreshed, because as I told Char when we were preparing, that I just returned from Lake Tahoe, where I was able to celebrate my 3-year wedding anniversary with my husband and catch up on some R&R that was much needed, and listen to one of my favorite podcasts right now, which is called The Black Print. And if you have not heard of The Black Print is hosted by Detavio Samuel, who is the CEO of Revolt Media. And it's where he interviews different Black leaders in business, law, politics, about how they raised or ascended to leadership. And recently he interviewed one of my C-suite muses, Bozoma St. John, who is the former CMO of Netflix and also an acclaimed author of The Urgent Life. And one thing he asked her, which I feel like sets the tone for our conversation, is what is one of the key factors that led her to the C-suite for Fortune 100 companies like Netflix and Pepsi and Apple? And simply, she said, it's relationships. And that really resonated with me, because it's also what has been a key factor in my success. And so essentially, that's what networking is, right? And that's what we're here to talk about, is strategic networking for growth and success. And networking essentially is relationship building with purpose, and while you're adding value along the way. So let's dive in and talk about more about what that means for all of you. So quickly, this is what we're going to cover as fast as we can, because I know I only have about 35 to 40 minutes. We're going to talk about why networking matters, right? Why is it important for you to engage in networking, especially when we know we all as women have competing priorities and a lot of things going on, but why it's essential that you do that for your growth and for your own personal success. Secondly, we'll talk about different cultures and how that correlates to different approaches to networking. We'll then get into some of the obstacles that women face in forming high-powered networks. And what I mean by that is going from quantity to creating quality networks. Then we'll talk about I'll share some of my tools and tactics for effective strategic networking. And then we will close with one of my favorite tactics, which is the Fabulous 5 contacts tactic. And this is a baseline tactic that anyone can use either to strengthen your network or to get started with building out a network. And then we'll do some Q&A at the end. So before we get started, you don't have to come off mute, because I know we're in webinar format. But at home, I want you to start by saying, this is going to be our affirmation for the year. We are going to show up and we are going to show out. So that is all of our affirmation. We're all coming into agreement that that's going to be our affirmation for the year. With so much after the pandemic and several years of isolation, women especially are craving human interaction. And so we're going to continue to make sure that we're showing up and showing out. When we get invites, we're going to show up. So let's get into why networking matters. Before I get into the top 10 reasons to network, which you see here, I want to share with you that I talked to hundreds of women in my role as director of B&I, and then the other roles that Char mentioned. And what I have found is that women of color especially, they loathe networking and they don't want to engage in it for a number of reasons. Either they don't see the value in it, there are, again, competing priorities, the time is not there. And so what I want to do right now is I'm going to pose a question to this group, and I want you all to use the hand emoji, raise hand emoji, to respond. How many of you have walked into a room and you didn't see anyone that looked like you? Or you've randomly had to walk up to a group of strangers and you strain to try to find a point of relatability? Exactly. So I will tell you that that is common. And I am an extrovert and I love, love, love people. It doesn't matter what size of the crowd, I want to be there, right? But even I have felt that awkwardness, right, walking into the room. And I was talking to my mom recently about this, because right off the bat, as soon as I walk into the room, there's a few things you notice about me. Number one, I'm Black. Number two, I'm a woman. Number three, the assumption is normally that I'm young, and normally younger than I really am. And fourth, there's normally a conversation with women about my eye makeup, but that's a different topic. And so with that, when I have found that women are more reclusive in crowds, right? Because of these different barriers or these different obstacles when it comes to networking. And so here are some of the reasons, in addition to our affirmation that we just talked about for the year, that you should engage in networking if you're not already engaging. Number one, we are in the relationship business, right? So we need long-standing and deeper relationships to really be successful. And what I mean by that is not passive or superficial relationships, right? But ones that have to be nurtured over time. And so the only way we can do that is if we're continuing to get in front of people that we don't know, but also continuing to get in front of people that we do know. Number two, there's power in having social capital, which allows us to attract inbound opportunities. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that I'll tell you, when I was working at the last law firm, big law firm that I was at, Norton Rose Fulbright, that what I realized from a lot of the power players that were women at that firm, that were getting the awards, that were constantly featured in the media, that were constantly getting speaking opportunities, that the reason they were getting these opportunities and those same opportunities kept coming to the same group of women was because of their social network and their network sharing with others, that they were engaging in these types of activities. And so this is a lever that you're able to pull to help you ascend and grow in your career. Number three, it helps you grow through advice you receive and exposure to new areas and new ideas. And so consistently, especially with younger women that I talk to, the consistent ask is, how do I get a mentor? How do I learn about different areas maybe that I don't know about? Well, one key factor is to get out there and network and get to know people and to show up and show out, right? There are many things that I've learned about and opportunities that I've learned about just by, I'll talk about even recently, I don't know how to ski. I was going to Tahoe. Me attending these events that I went to last week, I was able to learn some tactics and learn some skills about, learn how to ski just by sharing that I had never skied before. And so just by showing up at those events. Number four, networking helps to support you building a brand. I'm not going to go into too deep into what branding is, but essentially branding is how you perceive yourself and the value that you bring to the table and how the world perceives you and the brand and the value that you bring to the table. And when you have a network, a strong, high quality network, what I have found is they become your megaphones, right? They're in all of these rooms that maybe you're not in, talking about the value that you bring into the table. And so when you have a strong quality network, you're able to really scale what it is that you're doing and attract more to you, opportunities to you. Number five, developing a powerful network is a key factor in career advancement. And so this is a way really for you to attract sponsors, as opposed to what I was just talking about with mentorship. The difference between the two. A mentor, I always say, you can seek out. A sponsor is earned, right? Through rapport, through credibility, through your work product, that's how you get sponsors. And so when you are out, as you develop your network, both internally and externally, right? People are seeing what you're doing. They're seeing what you bring to the table. This is a way for you to begin to collectively ascend, right? By people externally, again, serving as that megaphone and talking about the things that you're doing, right? And the value that you bring to the table, and the same thing internally. And if you have both working in tandem, it's even more powerful. Number six, it breaks down cultural barriers. A perfect example of this is at Blink Rome, we have one of our largest and most signature events is our Women's Leadership Summit. And it brings, what I love about this event, and it brings women from all different backgrounds together. And it brings us in proximity for us to be able to learn about each other's experiences, right? Whereas when we go back into our offices and may not be able to interact and engage in that way, in a more intimate setting, it can create more obstacles and barriers to us learning about each other. And so by going to different things like that, like as example, the Women's Leadership Summit, and showing up at events like that, it allows us to really to bridge those gaps. Number 7, and we've talked about this a little bit, learning about new growth opportunities. I will tell you, and Shar and I were just talking about this at a National Bar Association Women Lawyers Division event that I attended. That's where I found out about McKinsey's Connected Leaders Executive Leadership Academy. And I brought that back into our firm, and both myself and also one of our department heads, who is also a Black woman, we participated in that program, and we met so many other amazing Black executives across the country, including in-house counsel. And we just continue building those relationships since that time. We also received a certification, which was great. And that allows us to continue to build on those networks locally. Number 8. Local, national, global contacts give you a better outlook on what is happening close to home and around the world. What I mean by this is recently one of my mentees asked, how important is it for me to have a local network versus a national network or a global network? And I really said you should have all 3, right? Because there are going to be times where you may have needs that are local, same thing nationally, and the same thing globally. I have a group of women that I stay connected to that are in Ghana, a group in Tokyo, a group in Shanghai, and that allows me to have a better view of what's happening around the world, and also be able to connect people with those contacts when they're going into those countries, and vice versa. Number 9, it allows you, it's a domino effect, right? Shar and I were talking about that as well. A friend of mine, sorority sister, Sharon Bridges, if you don't know her, you should know her, a member of the National Bar Association Women Lawyers Division, has been one of those people that has introduced me to so many other amazing women. And in turn, I have done the same for her. And it has just allowed to be this steady flow of communication and opportunity with all of these women. Number 10, you get invites to events and activities. And that may seem like a small thing, but sometimes you're getting access into rooms that you may not have otherwise had access to, simply by the power of networking. So now we're going to launch a poll, and we're going to talk about the different cultures and how different cultures lead to different styles of networking. And so you'll see that, thanks Tracy, you'll see that a poll now on the screen. And with this poll, the question is, when you enter a room at conferences or large events, you A, gravitate to people that look like you, B, gravitate to people that don't look like you, C, keep to yourself, or D, a combination of the answers above. And I'm going to give about 1 minute to respond to the poll. So please respond. And by the way, no judgment. And Tracy, I can't see on my end, so perfect, thank you. So what we see is that our highest number of responses, which is interesting, is a combination of the answers above. So we had 46% that responded D, combination of the answers above. And we had 25% that keep to yourself. Then the next was 21% with gravitate to people that look like you. And then 7% gravitate to people that don't look like you. Thank you for entertaining me. And now we're going to talk about just different styles, and this will lend itself to the poll that we just took. So you'll see here, we're going to talk about two different approaches, and Catalyst put out this report that talks about how women of color deal with networking barriers, and also the different approaches to how they approach network, so depending on their cultural background. So this first networking approach is called blending in. And this is the networking approach that reflects the characteristics of being attracted to those in power. In the US and US organizations, this typically means that the networks of those that use the blending in approach are more consistently have white and or male colleagues in their networks. Blending in can also mean choosing to network with colleagues from the same company rather than with people from outside of the organization. And so what the Catalyst report found is that after evaluating thousands of women that responded to their survey, is that Asian and Asian American women tend to use more of the blending in style. And they found that more than half of their networks were comprised of mostly white men. At least over 50% were comprised of white men. The next style, is the sticking together approach. So some women of color build their networks composed mainly of members of their own race or ethnicity and or gender. And this can also mean networking with those in the community for relatability and for security. So the Catalyst report found that African American women have more of a tendency to use the sticking together approach for a number of reasons, including security, relatability, and feeling a higher level of self-awareness and self-worth when they are commingling with people that are relatable and like them. This report found that Latina women that represent as or identify as Hispanic or Latino women actually do a combination of the two. They use the blending in approach. So they found that 56% of their networks were made up of white people, also mostly men, but they also use the sticking together approach, which meant that from a gender perspective, which meant that they also had a lot of women of all different backgrounds in their network. So what does this mean, right? How does that play out for all of us, our different approaches, and what's the best approach? So in the research, what they found out was that looking at the blending in versus the sticking together approach, that the best approach is a combination of the two. So I was happy to see that there was about 41% of us that say that we do a combination of networking styles, right? By the blending in piece, right? The benefit in that is, and really the advice here in this forum, is that if you currently have a broad network, right? And that broad network pretty much looks exactly like you, it's time to start to identify some people that may be interesting to you, that may be some power players, that may be influential in some way, that may be able to teach you something to be able to bring them into your network. And that can be internally or externally, right? The sticking together piece, right? If you have more of your network does not look like you, right? It may be time to bring in some people that you do have some relatability with, right? And the reason why we do that, or why they found that this is the optimal approach to networking, is by a combination of these two networking approaches, is that the blending in approach has been found to lead to advancement, right? Having people that have some power within an organization or externally have led to higher levels of advancement and promotion within the organization, and also opportunities externally. The sticking together approach resulted more so in a higher level of commitment or loyalty to an organization, and also a stronger sense of self-worth and self-awareness. And so by combining the two, you really have an optimal level for advancement and growth. So now we've talked about the different networking approaches. We're now going to talk about some of the barriers or some of the obstacles that women face when it comes to forming a high power network. And what I mean by that is that this is really about going from quantity, so having large and broad networks of people, to quality, right? So sometimes what I have found is that some of the strongest networks may not even be that big, but they are strategically curated and they have the right mix of people within their networks for different reasons and different needs. So some of the obstacles that were found in a Forbes article called the new study that reveals 6 barriers keeping women from high power networks. The first was there is more focus that women put on social aspects than power moves by spending more time with peers or those that are more junior to them out of fear of intimidation or, again, unrelatability. And what I will tell you just quickly, some quick advice here, I'm going to give quick advice with each bullet, is that when I come into an organization, I immediately identify at least 3 to 5 power players in the organization, and I ask them out for coffee, whether that's a virtual coffee meeting or in person, because I want to get to know them. I want to get to know more about their role within the organization. And this tactic has worked really well for me because normally those people then want to introduce you to other people in the organization. So it's not to say that you now don't spend any time with your peers or those that are junior to you, but it is to say that to make sure that you are not leaning so heavily to just your peers and junior level people that are junior to you, that you should have a good mix, right? And making sure that there are some power players that are within that mix. Secondly, another barrier is the lack of confidence or look at reaching out as desperation, and which often makes people uncomfortable. What I will say is start small here, right? If you are uncomfortable or you feel like you are not confident enough yet to go into a large room and to begin to meet with a whole bunch of people, which is not the right tactic anyway, I would say start small, join committees locally, join local organizations, nonprofits, and begin to build up your networking muscle. And this will help you to start building confidence. And then you'll be able to take on different rooms and different audiences with more confidence. Number 3. The third barrier, not being comfortable with self-exploitation or promotion. See it as being boastful. I will tell you what my mentor and sponsor at work tells me, and that is that there is a fine line between celebrating wins and being braggadocious, and that you need to really figure out a good balance between the two. You don't want to be that person that's constantly out there every few days saying what you did, what you won. But I would say that sharing and celebrating your victories, there's nothing wrong with that. And just being able, again, to find that good balance. I'll also share this. Men have no problem sharing their wins, right? Sometimes too often. There is a rainmaker that I know, a guy that every week he picks up the Wall Street Journal. He finds the power players within the Wall Street Journal and he calls them up and tells them what he's accomplished as a lawyer. You would think that this tactic is not successful, but it has been very successful for him, which has led to him continuously getting business in that way. I'm not saying take that approach, but that's an extreme example of someone who has no problem with promoting their wins, their successes, and it has worked out. The fourth barrier is bowing out or missing out because of other responsibilities, whether that's parenting, caregiving, whatever it is. I also have these competing priorities and challenges as the bonus mom of 3, a wife, very active in the community. And what I would say is try to find either day activities, so things that you can do early, or either early morning, depending on your kid's schedule or your schedule, in the afternoon, or opportunities where you can integrate your personal and your professional life, whether that's a mommy's day out, whether that's a family day. I often take my husband with me traveling when I'm on the road, for us to be able to still spend quality time together. And I tack on a vacation right after, a business trip. That's a way for you to integrate the two. The next barrier is women don't show up because they feel they won't know what to do or what to talk about. And we're going to address this when we go into the tools and tactics that I'm about to talk about shortly, but it's really about preparation, right? Having some talking points already in your head before you enter in a room will make you feel a lot more comfortable and less awkward about trying to figure out what it is that you want to talk about. The next barrier is believing that quantity over quality is the way to go. And we talked about this. A lot of times when I talk to women, it is like, okay, I'm going to go to this event, and I'm going to go to this event, and I'm going to go to this, and I'm going to try to meet these different people, but there is no thought behind it. And so it becomes wasted energy, and it also burns you out very quickly. And so we'll talk about that in a minute. And then the last barrier is women are excluded from stereotypical male-driven activities and conversations. So I recently experienced this. Last week, as I mentioned, I was in DC. I was at a Black art exhibit as our Black History Month event for Blank Rome, which is the firm that I work at. And I like to disrupt, right? That's what I do for my job for a living. And so there was a group of high-powered white men at this event, and I walked up to the group because I saw that it was lacking diversity. And they all stopped talking. And I was like, don't stop talking on my account. What were we talking about? I heard we were talking about running and jogging and dogs, and and that led to, and I let them know I don't have a dog. I don't run, but tell me more. As I said to Char when we started this conversation, and that broke the ice. They started laughing, and we ended up talking about Tahoe, and they were teaching me how to ski by the end of the conversation. That's all to say is, embrace discomfort, because you never know where it will lead. So now to the fun stuff, the tools and the tactics. But first, a quote from one of my favorite organizational psychologists and change management experts at Wharton, Adam Grant. If you have not read his book, Give and Take, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, please do so. The Audible version is easy to digest. And the quote is, if we create networks with the sole intention of getting something, we won't succeed. We can't pursue the benefits of networks. The benefits ensue from investments in meaningful activities and relationships. And I love that because it goes to what I'm talking about in the trend here about quality. Sorry about that. So it looks like my tool slide is not here for some reason in this presentation. And so I'm just going to go through them with you. I wanted you to be able to take a picture if you wanted to, but it's not, since it's not here, I will just share with you what those tools are. So the first tool is Give and Take by Adam Grant. Is a book that I just mentioned, and it is really about the power of reciprocity, right? And not expecting anything, being able to build out a network by simply being kind and doing for others without expecting anything back. With the law of nature, it will eventually come back to you. And so if you haven't read it, make sure to do so. It is a great tool. The second is the Build Your Dream Network book by J. Kelly Hoey. I love this quote by J. Kelly Hoey. It's access is the new economy. And so she is a network expert. She actually has a podcast. So if you don't have the time to read the book, the podcast is just as good. But she really talks about how she strategically identified people to build out a quality network, and how not to waste your time, again, building out and expending a lot of energy on just meeting people to meet people, but doing so with intentionality, and really how she has been able to grow her business and her brand by doing that. The third tool is legal and business publications. And so I find that a lot of times, publications like law.com, Savoy Magazine, if you're not following Lori Robertson, Lori Hayden, who is the founder of CCWC, make sure that you do that. Because she's always posting great content, but you also get to find out about amazing women across the country, right? And a lot of times I have used that information to reach out to women that I just think are doing some amazing things and been able to really build my network out in that way by setting up meetings, setting up coffee meetings, getting introduced. So make sure that you really look, if you can carve out some time just looking at some of these publications. And when you see people that are of interest, finding ways to connect with them. The next tool is Calendly. And Calendly, I would say it's a useful tool to use if you are constantly having meetings externally, right? Or if you are a solo practitioner and you're trying to find a more effective way to manage all of your relationships, Calendly is a great tool for you to look into. The other is Evernote, and I live by that, right? I live by Evernote. If you do not have OneNote or Evernote, I would suggest that you download the app. It's free, but it's a great way as you get out and meet and greet people for you to keep notes on different people that you meet. I find that when you follow up or when you reaching out, to have a touch point with somebody, being able to have a unique point about that person is a great way for better human connection and relatability. And so I often will take notes in Evernote about people that I meet and reference them when I need to. The great feature about that is that you can filter and you can find what you need very quickly. The next tool is Landit. And so Landit, if you have never heard of it, is the CEO is a Black woman, Lisa Tatum. I think it's Lisa Skeet Tatum. I may have that backwards, but the platform is free and it is a professional or career development all-in-one platform. So it allows you to make connections, but it also allows you to stay on top of what you're doing and the people that you meet throughout your career development. Next, of course, we've all heard of this one, Facebook. And I would just say, if you're not posting on Facebook, I'm not going to stay too long on this, but if you're not posting on Facebook or not engaged, you should think about doing it and using that more to share personal experiences or personal milestones or on Facebook. The next is one of my personal faves, and that is LinkedIn. Again, if you're not into it yet, get into it. I look at LinkedIn at least maybe 4 times a day. And I make sure that my profile is up to date. So many opportunities have come through LinkedIn, from, sliding into the DMs on LinkedIn to people just reading my profile and wanting to get to know me at all different levels. I've been able to build out my network through LinkedIn. And that could be really the only tool on this list. And it would be definitely sufficient. The next tool is Blink, and it's spelled BLINQ. And Blink is the new business card. It is an app that I believe is also free. It is a way to create a digital business card. So rather than the old school way of continuously going to the printer, getting your business cards printed, it's a way for you to have your profile picture, and a QRC code so people can have all of your information as soon as they scan your phone. The next 2 tools are Hootsuite is one. And Hootsuite, what I love about that is, I just talked about being on Facebook and LinkedIn. And what I always hear when I share that is women are like, I don't have time. I don't have time for even one platform, social media platform. Hootsuite takes a lot of the work away from you because it integrates all of these platforms together and it helps you to be more efficient when it comes to management. So Hootsuite could be posting for you while you're asleep. So that's what I love about Hootsuite. And it has a free subscription that does have more limited capability, but it's something to check out. And then lastly is the headline analyzer. So you can just simply Google headline analyzer. And what this is that I'll use LinkedIn as an example. I always get the question when I say, make sure you add a headline, which is at that top right under your name, or I think it's right under your name on LinkedIn, women will say, why do I need to have a headline? I just want to, put my information, put my experience. Most of the time, people are moving so quickly, they don't even read the body of your LinkedIn profile. They may get as far as the summary about you, but they normally stay on top of the feed and they look at your headline. And the headline analyzer will help you to optimize your headline. And what I mean by that, it'll give you keywords that you should include in your headline. If you feel like you're not one of those creative people to come up with the right headline, it will show you and make some suggestions for you so that you can get higher level of engagement when people stop on your profile. So those are some of the tools that I use. And sorry, like I said, I wanted to be able to share these slides with you, but that's okay. The next is some tactics that I want to share. And we'll get into the tactic that you just saw a few minutes ago in a minute. But the first is to know your audience and the problem that you're trying to solve, right? When you're going into a room, and this is where that prep work comes in, you should ask yourself before you go into the room, what value do I bring to the table? What is it that I do day to day? What are the problems that I solve? And you should find a 1 to 2 sentence or concise way to answer those questions, and arm yourself and be able to go into a room and share that with different people, while you're also sprinkling in personal points about yourself and engaging just in regular dialogue. Number 2 is what I call pre-gaming. And pre-gaming is where you are identifying people. So I'll use CCWC, Corporate Council Women of Color Conference again. Every year, Lori sends out the brochure that shows you the women that are going to be on the panel, right? Or women also that are sponsoring the event. I find women that I want to meet with at the conference that I may not even know. Some I do know, some I don't know. But I will reach out to them either by email or by LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm going to be at the conference as well. Would love to meet with you. That's what I mean by warming outreach. I have found this to be very successful. Some women have asked me, that's so weird. It's so awkward. I don't want to, I don't know them. They don't know me. I have had 100% pretty much positive response rate when I've used this approach. So, and what I mean by that is, yes, there's some times where they don't respond. But when they do respond, it's been a positive response. And I have had a number of meetings set up in that way. So that's the pre-game. The post-game is the next tactic. And that is to, when you meet people, right, you're scanning, you're getting their digital cards, you're getting their information, you're putting the notes in your Evernote app or your OneNote app, and you're following up no less than 48 hours after you meet them. That quick of a touch point, studies have shown it has a tendency to start to deepen the relationship, and people are a higher response rate if you don't take any less than 48 hours to respond. The next tactic is what I call the grand opening and the grand closing. And this is where you do a combination of sharing personal and professional points. So you shouldn't spend I suggest, what a lot of times also what I see with women is getting comfortable sharing more. Either they're leaning too far on sharing what they're doing professionally and it's all about work, or they're leaning too heavily talking about just the personal things that they have going on. And you should find a way to combine the two while also finding ways to sprinkle in that value statement that we were talking about, or the problem that you're trying to solve. Next, you should carve out in calendar time each week, and I suggest at least 2 hours a week. So really setting time on your calendar for you to do the types of doing some of these tactics we're talking about in building out your network, right? So you have to find time to do your outreach, to identify the people, some of the things we've talked about, to do some of the pre-gaming. If you're about to go to an event, you need to just carve out some time to do that. Next, be mindful of how you invest your time and be diligent when selecting organizations and events. I talk a lot to women about this, where women will call me and ask me, well, should I go to this conference? Should I join this organization? And what I would say is you need to really have a short list of what it is you're trying to get out of an organization and what it is you're trying to get out of an event. That's what I mean by being mindful. And if you find that the list the paper is blank and there really isn't good reasons for why you want to join those organizations or go to that event, it probably isn't worth your time. And you could be spending your time doing other things to build out your network. Next is to tap into your Sasha Fierce. And if you're not familiar with Beyonce's alter ego, find out about it. But this is really just to, when you're going into a room, it's really about being your authentic self. This is not saying you now have to do a grandiose dance performance, but this is more so tapping into your natural self, what feels comfortable for you, but also what attracts people to you, right? Whatever that is. And so that may be, something that happened to you that's a unique, situation that someone may have not experienced. I'll use my example again about Tahoe. I've never been skiing before. And so sharing that with other people, it opened up a lot of dialogue. And it also had people introducing me to other people who wanted to share different information about it. So that's what I mean by the tapping into your Sasha Fierce. The next, and I have two more tactics here. The next is from Colette Dixon, who is a thought leader. And she says, take every opportunity to be in the room and add value to your conversations. And we talked about that, right? Making sure that you're sprinkling in what is the problem that you solve? What is the value that you bring to the table? More times than not, women are not talking about that like the way that men are talking about that. And this is often why the network mix looks different from men to women, right? Because they're taking the opportunity to, yes, we're being personal, yes, we're being friendly, but I'm also sharing with you what it is I do and how I do it, then so you can go take that to other people. And the last tactic is what I call the Nike plus Matthew Knowles strategy. And that is to just do it and do it now. And what I mean by that is kind of takes us back to our affirmation of showing up and showing out. If you get an invite, right, and to an event and it is of interest and you've done your short list and you find there are some benefits to me going, whether it's the people that are going to be there, the content, then you need to just do it. Just go and spend some time there getting to know the people that are there. And I promise you that something will come out of it, even if there's not a direct benefit or an immediate benefit. So now going into one of my favorite tactics, which is called the Fabulous 5 Contacts. And so what this tactic is to say, if you have not yet, again, you don't have a strong network, or you have a smaller network, but it's not necessarily the quality network you're looking for, or if you want to strengthen your network, this is a way to do it. This is what I call a baseline tactic. So what I suggest is, and I actually have a tool that we're going to be circulating for you to be able to map this out. But these 5 contacts are what you consider your virtual board of advisors. If you do not yet have, and I'm going to go through each contact. If you don't have a contact that reflects what it is that you see here and what we're going to be talking about, then the goal after you leave this session is to identify someone that matches this profile. So the first contact you want to make sure you have in your network, if you don't already, is a mentor. And we talked about that. A mentor is someone that can be sought out. It doesn't have to be this person does not have to be within your organization. And so this person provides advice on how to navigate through your career and or your workplace. Contact number 2 is a sponsor. And we talked earlier about sponsorship, right? This is someone that normally this relationship is earned. And the sponsor is normally someone who has influence and strong connections that can be leveraged to help you advance your career in some way. The third contact is what we call the connector. And this is someone who is very well connected, has a strong quality network, and is happy to make introductions to support your professional goals with no strings attached. So they use the Adam Grant give and take approach of giving without expecting direct return. And I talked about my friend and soror, Sharon Bridges, earlier, and she's a perfect example of the connector. Contact number 4 is a high profile friend. So this high profile friend is someone that will be able to put you in rooms and give you accessibility that you may not have had otherwise. And this is a person normally that also has what we call gravitas or executive presence, meaning they have charisma and they're able to shine in every room, and you can kind of lean into that shine that they're bringing into the room while also having your own. And then contact number 5 is a coach. So this coach is someone who is transparent about areas of improvement for yourself, and while also providing practical guidance and supporting you and celebrating your wins. You have to have somebody like that in your corner that helps to balance out and round out your network. Now, this is not to say, right, that these are the only people that you need to build out a quality network, but this is the baseline of how you start to identify people and get a stronger, higher quality mix within your network to take it to the next level and really elevate. And so the tool that I mentioned that we are now going to drop in the chat, Tracy's going to drop it in the chat, is what I call the Fabulous 5 Contact Worksheet. And this will allow you to be able to map out, and just so you're going to need some time of reflection to think about your network and think about all of your connections and see, you may have all 5 of these contacts already in your network, you may have none. And so it's a way to start to map out if you do have them, if you don't have them, then it's a way to start targeting and finding people or identifying people. And you can use some of those tools we talked about to identify people that could maybe fit the bill for some of these contacts. The other thing that you'll see within the Fabulous 5 Contact Worksheet is a calendar. So it will help you to map out different times throughout the year. First of all, you can put in there different events that are coming up or different meetings that are happening, and ways or different moments or experiences where you can be able to have a touch point with these different contacts that you include in your Fabulous 5 contacts. And I would recommend that with these Fabulous 5 contacts that you meet at least 2 times a quarter, at least to get started. So you need to have more frequent touch points with these contacts, because they're going to definitely be a launch pad for you to continue to just build out a quality network. And that's really all I have. I'm going to turn it back over to Shar for Q&A if we have time. And then I also invite all of you to connect with me on LinkedIn and stay in touch, of course, and keep up with and make sure that you're using our mantra all year long, which is to show up and to show out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. I hope everyone is connecting with her on LinkedIn right now, because she is amazing. So we'll go to Q&A. I know that one person had a question, Krystal, about what's the name, and can you tell us a little bit about the executive leadership program that you mentioned earlier?
Yes, I can. Sorry about that. Put it back in reading view. Yes, I can. So what I was talking about is the McKinsey Executive Leadership Program. And so this is part of McKinsey, of course, is a Big 4 consulting company, if you're not familiar with it. And they started as part of their racial equity and social justice program. They have launched a free leadership academy, and they have it at the executive level. So if you're at least 2 jumps from the C-suite or in the C-suite, and then they have a manager track for those that are more mid-level, at the mid-level management, so or at mid-level career points. And what the beauty of it is, they have different sessions. It's pretty intensive. I think it lasts for about 8 weeks. But it's a way for you to meet other executives, and other leaders across the country. And you come together. They have different, different cohorts. So they have a Black cohort, they have an Asian American cohort, and then they have a Latina cohort as well. And so it's free. You reach out to McKinsey and they help you to set it up and get you connected within the network, and also assign you to a cohort and a coach, and work with you to continue to develop your leadership skills. So it's a win-win.
Awesome. And just a quick reminder, if you have any additional questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box. Another question we had for you, Krystal, is how has it been in regards to being able to get jobs just from your networking experience in extracurricular activities?
Well, first of all, I'll talk about the job that it's been great. To answer your question, for the job that I have right now, you talked about this chart earlier. Last year, I was wearing a lot of different hats, and I was consulting for Axiom. I was the executive director of the downtown group. I was director of strategy and operations for, the diverse attorney pipeline program. But through that experience is what caught the eye of the chief of HR at Blank Rome. And in our first conversation, she just talked about, that she had heard from other people that she knew from within those circles about me, and was floated my resume. And so that's one opportunity. The other opportunity is for Music World Entertainment, and how that job even came about. That came about from me going to an event that we had while I was working for another nonprofit at the time, and meeting the CEO, Beyonce's dad, Matthew Knowles, and meeting the COO at that time. So I showed up and had a conversation with them about the changes in the music industry and how I would come in and how I wanted to change the music industry. And a week later, I had a job. So those are some of the examples of how I have leveraged networking to be able to get job opportunities. And what I'll say, I talked about this earlier, this being a key factor of my success, is that going to an HBCU, not necessarily being not being in an Ivy League, not being in the top tier or top of my class, although I did still pretty well. Relationships have been a great pathway for me to get so many different opportunities, jobs and otherwise.
Awesome. And last question, what would be your advice for women of color who want to network kind of together in groups, opposed to individually?
Yeah, so I'm going to use, this is an example I actually wanted to give, and so it's perfect to close out with, is that, first of all, there are formal organizations that you could join, right? Well, I talked about one throughout this presentation, the Corporate Council of Women of Color, which is for, in-house women, but also outside counsel, so lawyers, who are not in-house as well. Locally, you should find out if there are any organizations. You talked about some of the ones I'm involved in, like the downtown group. I know in Dallas, they have a new roundtable. So locally, there may be organizations for you to, on a smaller scale, get with women of color. But this is what I would tell you. If there isn't one, create it. And my example I want to use is when I was executive director of the downtown group, as a way to try to grow our membership, I started my own campaign for myself called the Welcome to Houston campaign. And every time I would see on LinkedIn that a woman had a new job and they were moving to Houston, I would reach out to them. I would slide into their DMs and I would say, hey, I'm Krystal. I'm the executive director of the downtown group. Would love to take you out to coffee or drinks to welcome you to Houston. I'm still doing that. I'm no longer the executive director. I'm meeting with the managing counsel of Chevron in a few weeks to have coffee, because she said, I don't have any friends here. I don't know anybody here. And so that's a way for you to start your own way of meeting up with people in own forums if you can't find one locally or nationally that's of interest.
Love it. Okay, and so we do have a question in chat box that I want to end with. It says, What's your recommendation for reaching out to an individual that agreed to review your resume and help connect you to others after not hearing back from them after several weeks?
And so can you repeat that, Char? Can you repeat that question?
So basically, do you have a recommendation about how to do follow-up with someone that agreed to review your resume and kind of be the connector for you, but you haven't heard back from them?
Yeah, I would say, so normally I have the rule of three. And that is that I will follow up with you at least 3 times. And if after those 3 times I don't hear from you, it's pretty much you went dark. I say you've gone dark, and it's time to find somebody else that can do that for you, right? Whether within your network or reaching out to those within your network to maybe introduce you to someone else to do that.
Oh, I love it. So, want to first thank Krystal for being an amazing presenter. I have so many tips that I learned today in regards to networking. And I know that everyone were taking notes. We're also going to have a follow-up email so that you can receive some of the great tactics and skills that Krystal mentioned today. And additionally, just want to also thank ABA Young Lawyers Division, the Women of Color Task Force, and also each participant. Thank you for tuning in today. We're so ecstatic that you've been here, and we hope that this helps with your professional growth. So thank you for an insightful presentation, and I hope everyone have a great rest of your day.
Yes, have a great weekend, and don't forget to show up and show out. Thanks so much, Char.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Tracy.
Krystal.
All right.